ruthless, ambitious, innovative. These words describe Oda Nobunaga, the warlord who came closer to unifying Japan than any before him. A spark in the turbulent sea of feudal Japan, Nobunaga rose from minor daimyo to become the most feared man in the country. His journey from humble beginnings to the pinnacle of power shaped the course of Japanese history. In this video, we'll explore the life and times of Oda Nobunaga, examining the forces that drove him to such heights and the lasting impact of his legacy. What events molded this formidable leader, and how did his actions reverberate through the ages? In the year 1534, a young boy named Oda Nobunaga inherited a small domain in Owari province, setting in motion a series of events that would reshape the future of Japan. Born into a world of constant warfare and shifting alliances, Nobunaga's early life was marked by familial strife and political instability that would come to define his approach to leadership and conquest. As the eldest son of Oda Nobuhide, a minor daimyo in Owari province, Nobunaga was expected to follow in his father's footsteps and maintain the family's precarious position among the warring clans of Japan. However, from a young age, Nobunaga displayed behaviors that set him apart from his peers, earning him a reputation for eccentricity and unpredictability. Nobunaga's unconventional nature manifested in various ways, from his disregard for traditional etiquette to his keen interest in foreign ideas. This behavior, coupled with his apparent lack of interest in the affairs of state, led many to doubt his ability to lead. The death of Nobunaga's father in 1551 marked a turning point in the young lord's life. At the age of 17, Nobunaga found himself thrust into a position of leadership, vulnerable to the machinations of rival clans and even members of his own family. The power vacuum left by his father's passing created an opportunity for those who sought to exploit the perceived weakness of the young and inexperienced heir. In the face of these challenges, Nobunaga began to reveal the strategic mind that would later make him one of Japan's most formidable warlords. He employed unconventional tactics in dealing with internal threats, often catching his opponents off guard with his unpredictable approach to conflict resolution. As he navigated the treacherous political landscape of 16th century Japan, he began to form alliances and make enemies that would shape his worldview and approach to leadership. Tensions within Owari province reached a boiling point as various factions vied for control. Nobunaga's own family became a source of conflict, with his younger brother Nobuyuki emerging as a significant threat to his rule. The situation deteriorated to the point where open conflict became inevitable, setting the stage for Nobunaga's first major test as a military leader. In 1556, Nobunaga faced off against his brother Nobuyuki in a decisive battle for control of Owari province. This conflict would prove to be a turning point in Nobunaga's career, demonstrating his tactical acumen and willingness to take bold risks in pursuit of victory. Nobunaga's forces emerged victorious, solidifying his control over Owari province and eliminating the immediate threat to his rule. With his position in Owari secured, Nobunaga began to look beyond the borders of his ancestral lands, setting his sights on the fractured landscape of feudal Japan. It was during this period of expansion that Nobunaga's fascination with firearms and Western technology came to the forefront. At a time when many Japanese leaders viewed foreign innovations with suspicion, Nobunaga recognized the potential of these new weapons to revolutionize warfare. He actively sought out knowledge of gunpowder weapons and began incorporating them into his military planning, a decision that would prove crucial in his future conquests. Nobunaga's early experiences had forged him into a leader unlike any other in Japan at the time. His unconventional approach to warfare, willingness to embrace new technologies, and ruthless determination set him apart from his contemporaries. As he prepared to expand his influence beyond Owari province, Nobunaga carried with him the lessons learned from his troubled youth and the conviction that he was destined for greatness. In the year 1560, a pivotal moment in Japanese history unfolded as Imagawa Yoshimoto, a powerful daimyo from the east, set his sights on the imperial capital of Kyoto. With an army of 25,000 strong, Yoshimoto's forces posed an existential threat to the fledgling domain of Oda Nobunaga, who commanded a mere 3,000 troops. As the Imagawa host marched westward, they encountered little resistance. their overwhelming numbers inspiring fear and capitulation among local warlords. Nobunaga, however, saw an opportunity where others perceived only doom. The odds seemed insurmountable. Nobunaga's generals, hardened veterans of countless battles, advised caution and retreat. They argued that preserving their forces for a future confrontation was the wisest course of action. But Nobunaga, ever the iconoclast, proposed a bold strategy: a surprise attack on the Imagawa army. This decision would test not only Nobunaga's tactical acumen, but also his ability to inspire unwavering loyalty in his men. Nobunaga's scouts provided crucial intelligence on the Imagawa forces' movements and disposition. They reported that Yoshimoto's army, confident in their numerical superiority, had grown complacent, engaging in premature victory celebrations. Nobunaga seized upon this information, devising a plan that would utilize the terrain and weather conditions to maximum effect. The region around Okehazama, characterized by densely forested hills and narrow valleys, provided ample cover for a smaller force to maneuver undetected. On the day of the battle, fortune favored Nobunaga. A heavy rainstorm descended upon the area, further obscuring visibility and muffling the sounds of movement. Nobunaga's force used hidden mountain paths to quietly position themselves near the Imagawa encampment. As the rain subsided and the unsuspecting Imagawa soldiers resumed their festivities, Nobunaga prepared to strike. In a move that would become legendary, Nobunaga personally led the charge. The Oda forces burst from the forest, war cries echoed across the valley. The Imagawa army found itself in complete disarray. Panic spread like wildfire. Nobunaga's troops cut through enemy lines like a scythe through wheat. The once mighty Imagawa ranks crumbled like a fortress of sand before the rising tide of Oda's assault. In the chaos of the melee, Imagawa Yoshimoto himself met his end. According to some accounts, he mistook the initial Oda attack for a drunken brawl among his own men, not realizing the gravity of the situation until it was too late. This confusion in the Imagawa command structure further contributed to their rapid collapse. The Battle of Okehazama, despite its enormous strategic importance, lasted only a few hours. By the time the sun set on that fateful day, Nobunaga had achieved what many considered impossible. The Imagawa army, once poised to dominate central Japan, lay in ruins. Those who survived fled eastward, their dreams of conquest shattered. The repercussions of Okehazama echoed far beyond the immediate aftermath of the battle. Nobunaga's victory established him as a military genius of the highest order. His willingness to take calculated risks, his ability to inspire his troops, and his tactical brilliance in using terrain and weather to his advantage became the stuff of legend. The battle served as a stark reminder that in the world of Japanese warfare, superior numbers did not always guarantee victory. In the wake of his stunning victory at Okehazama, Oda Nobunaga turned his attention to a revolutionary weapon that would transform the very nature of warfare in Japan. The arquebus, a foreign invention, was about to challenge the dominance of the samurai on the battlefield. Nobunaga's fascination with firearms, which had begun years earlier, now blossomed into a full-fledged military revolution. Undeterred by resistance from conservative elements within his own ranks, Nobunaga recognized the immense potential of gunpowder weapons to reshape the balance of power in Japan. He established manufacturing facilities dedicated to the production of arquebuses on an unprecedented scale. These workshops, staffed by skilled craftsmen and gunsmiths, began churning out firearms at a rate that would soon outpace any other domain in Japan. As his arsenal grew, Nobunaga devoted considerable time and resources to developing new tactics that would maximize the effectiveness of firearms on the battlefield. He introduced the concept of volley fire to Japanese warfare, a technique that allowed for sustained and devastating firepower. Like a relentless drumbeat heralding a new era, volley fire involved organizing arquebusiers into ranks. The first rank would fire their weapons, then step back to reload, while the next rank stepped forward to fire. This rotation created a constant barrage of lead balls that could decimate enemy formations. The psychological impact of this new style of warfare was as significant as its physical effects. The sight and sound of hundreds of arquebuses firing in unison often broke the morale of enemy forces before they could even engage in close combat. In one notable engagement, Nobunaga's arquebusiers decimated a cavalry charge, demonstrating the obsolescence of traditional mounted warfare in the face of massed gunfire. Nobunaga's mastery of firearms reached its zenith in 1575 at the Battle of Nagashino. Facing the renowned Takeda cavalry, Nobunaga arranged 3,000 arquebusiers behind a series of wooden palisades. As the Takeda forces charged, they were met with withering volleys of gunfire. The battle became a testament to the effectiveness of Nobunaga's tactics and the deadly potential of firearms when used en masse. The victory at Nagashino sent shockwaves through the Japanese military establishment. It demonstrated beyond doubt that the era of the mounted samurai was coming to an end, replaced by the age of gunpowder and infantry formations. Nobunaga's success inspired other daimyo to adopt similar tactics and invest in firearms, accelerating the transformation of Japanese warfare. The Gunpowder Revolution initiated by Nobunaga had profound implications beyond the battlefield. The ability to equip and train large numbers of common soldiers with firearms began to erode the traditional social hierarchy. Peasants, once considered little more than cannon fodder, could now wield weapons capable of defeating even the most skilled samurai. This shift in military power would eventually contribute to broader social changes in Japanese society. Nobunaga's embrace of firearms also had economic ramifications. The need for large quantities of gunpowder, lead, and skilled gunsmiths stimulated trade and manufacturing. Domains that could produce these vital resources gained strategic advantages, leading to a realignment of economic power across Japan. In 1576, Nobunaga began the construction of Azuchi Castle, a project that would redefine Japan's architectural landscape. This monumental undertaking marked a significant departure from traditional Japanese castle design, introducing stone foundations and walls that significantly increased durability and defensive capabilities. The use of stone as a primary building material, inspired by European fortifications, revolutionized Japanese architecture. Azuchi Castle's design incorporated advanced defensive features far ahead of their time in Japan. Steep angled walls resisted cannon fire and deterred scaling attempts. Multiple baileys created a layered defense system, each independently defensible. The castle's strategic placement on elevated ground provided commanding views of the surrounding landscape, enhancing both defense and regional administration. The construction of Azuchi Castle required an unprecedented mobilization of resources and labor. Nobunaga commandeered skilled stonemasons, carpenters, and artisans from across his domains. The logistics of transporting massive stone blocks posed significant challenges, necessitating new transportation methods and improved road networks. Completed in 1579, Azuchi Castle stood as a testament to Nobunaga's vision and power. Its central keep rose 7 stories high, dominating the skyline. Unlike traditional utilitarian designs, Azuchi Castle featured lavish interiors adorned with gold leaf and intricate artwork. The sight of this imposing fortress, gleaming in the sun, struck fear into the hearts of potential rivals, clearly demonstrating the futility of opposing Lord Nobunaga. These formidable fortresses served multiple purposes beyond military defense. They acted as visible manifestations of Nobunaga's growing influence and wealth, sending a clear message to potential rivals. The castles also served as administrative centers, housing government offices and providing secure storage for important documents and resources. Nobunaga's castle-building program provided a secure base for further expansion and centralized control. The network of fortifications allowed him to effectively manage his expanding territories, offering strategic strongholds for military campaigns and diplomatic negotiations. These castles also served as safe havens for Nobunaga's allies and vassals, fostering loyalty and creating a shared identity among his followers. The impact of Nobunaga's architectural innovations extended far beyond his lifetime. His design set a new standard for Japanese castle construction, influencing fortifications built by successors and rivals. The use of stone as a primary building material became widely adopted, leading to more durable and imposing structures across Japan. The legacy of these fortifications shaped Japanese castle design for generations. Multi-layered defenses, strategic use of terrain, and integration of administrative functions into castle complexes became hallmarks of Japanese castle architecture. Even as warfare evolved, the principles established by Nobunaga continued to influence the development of fortifications in Japan well into the Edo period. Nobunaga's castles represented more than mere military strongholds. They embodied a new concept of power centers that awed both allies and enemies. The fusion of military functionality and aesthetic grandeur reflected Nobunaga's vision for a new era of governance and control. These innovative fortifications not only secured his territories, but also became symbols of his authority, reshaping the physical and political landscape of Japan. In the year 1568, Oda Nobunaga set his sights on Kyoto, the ancient capital of Japan. This pivotal moment marked the beginning of a complex political chess game that would reshape the nation's future. Nobunaga's military prowess had already revolutionized warfare, but conquering Kyoto required a different set of skills. The Ashikaga shogunate, though weakened, still held nominal authority over the realm. Nobunaga, recognizing the need for legitimacy, formed a strategic alliance with Ashikaga Yoshiaki, the brother of the deceased shogun. This move provided Nobunaga with a foothold in Kyoto's intricate political landscape, while offering Yoshiaki a chance to claim his perceived birthright. The march on Kyoto was not without obstacles. Rival clans, such as the Rokkaku and Miyoshi, posed significant challenges, while militant Buddhist sects like the Ikko-Ikki wielded considerable influence. Nobunaga's forces engaged in a series of battles and sieges, methodically dismantling the opposition through a combination of military might and strategic alliances. As Nobunaga's army advanced, his diplomatic skills were put to the test. The political landscape of central Japan resembled a complex dance, with alliances, rivalries, and long-standing feuds intertwining. Nobunaga navigated this intricate network with precision, forging new alliances and exploiting existing rifts among his enemies. Upon reaching Kyoto in 1568, Nobunaga established unprecedented control over court affairs while showing deference to the emperor. He installed Ashikaga Yoshiaki as shogun, fulfilling their alliance. However, as Nobunaga's influence grew, the relationship between the two men became increasingly strained. Yoshiaki, expecting to wield real power, found himself reduced to a figurehead. The tension culminated in 1573, when Nobunaga discovered Yoshiaki's secret correspondence with rival clans, including the Takeda and Asakura. The betrayal cut deep, and Nobunaga's response was swift and decisive. He deposed Yoshiaki, ending the Ashikaga shogunate's 238-year rule and sending shockwaves through the political establishment. This bold move marked a turning point in Japanese history. Nobunaga had not only eliminated a potential rival, but also created a power vacuum that he fully intended to fill. In the wake of Yoshiaki's deposition, Nobunaga consolidated his control over Kyoto and the surrounding regions, implementing administrative reforms to centralize power and create a more efficient system of governance. Nobunaga's control of Kyoto granted him unprecedented access to imperial sanction for his actions. While he never took the title of shogun for himself, Nobunaga effectively became the power behind the chrysanthemum throne. This position allowed him to legitimize his conquests and political maneuverings in a way that had been impossible when he was merely a provincial daimyo. The fall of the Ashikaga shogunate and Nobunaga's rise to power in Kyoto laid the groundwork for what would eventually become a unified Japan. His ability to balance military might with political acumen proved crucial in navigating the complex landscape of 16th-century Japan. Nobunaga's journey from a regional warlord to the de facto ruler of the nation demonstrated the transformative power of ambition, strategy, and the willingness to seize opportunities in times of great change. As Nobunaga's grip on Kyoto tightened, the ambitious warlord turned his attention to reforming Japan's fragmented economy. The conquest of the imperial capital had given Nobunaga unprecedented political power, but he recognized that military might alone could not unify a nation divided by centuries of feudal rule and economic isolation. In the late 16th century, Japan's economy resembled a complex puzzle, with each piece controlled by powerful daimyo who jealously guarded their economic interests. Trade between domains was heavily restricted, with each region maintaining its own system of weights, measures, and currency. This fragmentation stifled commerce, hindered economic growth, and perpetuated the cycle of warfare that had plagued Japan for generations. Nobunaga's vision for a unified Japan required a radical overhaul of this antiquated system. In 1569, he began implementing a series of economic reforms known as Rakuichi Rakuza, which aimed to dismantle the monopolies and trade restrictions that had long dominated Japan's economic landscape. These reforms faced fierce resistance from entrenched interests, including powerful merchant guilds, local daimyo, and religious institutions. Undeterred, Nobunaga pressed forward. He abolished toll barriers between provinces, standardized weights and measures, and introduced a uniform currency system. The construction of an extensive network of roads and bridges became a cornerstone of his economic strategy, improving both military logistics and commercial transportation. As trade barriers fell and infrastructure improved, Nobunaga's policies began to attract merchants and artisans to urban centers. Cities like Kyoto, Osaka, and Azuchi experienced rapid growth, becoming hubs of commercial activity. This urbanization fostered the emergence of a new economic class, wealthy merchants who would play an increasingly important role in Japanese society. Nobunaga's economic vision extended beyond Japan's borders. Unlike many of his contemporaries, he actively encouraged trade with European powers, welcoming Portuguese and Spanish merchants to Japanese ports. This openness to foreign influence brought not only valuable goods, but also new technologies and ideas, particularly in the realm of military advancements. As Nobunaga's economic reforms took hold, their impact rippled across central Japan. By 1580, the regions under his control were experiencing unprecedented levels of economic integration and prosperity. Markets in different provinces became interconnected, allowing for the efficient distribution of goods and resources. The standardization of currency and measurements reduced transaction costs and encouraged long-distance trade. The growth of commerce and industry led to increased specialization and productivity. Regions began to focus on producing goods for which they had a comparative advantage, rather than striving for self-sufficiency. This specialization drove technological innovation as artisans and manufacturers sought to improve their products and production methods. Nobunaga's economic policies also had profound social implications. The rise of a merchant class and the weakening of traditional feudal bonds began to reshape Japanese society. While the samurai class remained dominant, the increasing importance of commerce and industry laid the groundwork for future social changes. By unfastening the economic bonds that had long constrained Japan's potential, Nobunaga set in motion a process of integration and growth that would continue long after his death. His reforms laid the foundation for the economic policies of his successors, Toyotomi Hideyoshi and Tokugawa Ieyasu, who would ultimately complete the unification of Japan and usher in a new era of prosperity and stability. As Nobunaga's influence spread across Japan, he encountered a formidable challenge that threatened to unravel his plans for unification. The powerful Buddhist monasteries, which had long wielded significant political and military influence in medieval Japan, stood as a formidable obstacle to his ambitions. These religious institutions, particularly the militant monks of the Ikko-Ikki sect, possessed not only spiritual authority, but also substantial military might, making them a direct threat to Nobunaga's growing authority. The Ikko-Ikki, a coalition of peasants, monks, and local nobles, united under the banner of Pure Land Buddhism, had established autonomous zones throughout central Japan. Their fortified temples served as both spiritual centers and military strongholds, challenging the traditional power structures that Nobunaga sought to control. The sect's ability to mobilize large armies of devoted followers made them a particularly dangerous opponent, capable of disrupting trade routes and inciting rebellion against daimyo authority. In 1571, Nobunaga launched a devastating attack on the Enryaku-ji temple complex atop Mount Hiei near Kyoto. This ancient center of Buddhist learning had stood for nearly 800 years. Nobunaga's forces surrounded the mountain, systematically burning the temples and slaughtering the inhabitants. The destruction sent shockwaves through Japanese society, as common people and monks alike watched in horror. This act of sacrilege demonstrated Nobunaga's ruthless determination to eliminate any power that challenged his authority, regardless of its spiritual significance. Following the destruction of Enryaku-ji, Nobunaga turned his attention to the Iko-iki strongholds, particularly the fortress temple of Ishiyama Hongan-ji in Osaka. The siege of Ishiyama Hongan-ji lasted from 1570 to 1580, becoming one of the longest and most complex military operations of Nobunaga's career. In his campaign, Nobunaga employed innovative tactics that showcased his military ingenuity. He implemented a strategy of economic warfare, cutting off supply lines and isolating the complex from its supporters. Nobunaga's forces constructed a series of forts around the temple, creating a blockade. In 1576, he used fireships equipped with wooden towers, filled with gunpowder and flammable materials, to destroy much of the Iko-iki's naval capacity. Simultaneously, Nobunaga engaged in religious realpolitik, promoting rival groups to counterbalance the influence of established Buddhist sects. He offered protection and support to Jesuit missionaries, allowing them to build churches and conduct activities freely within his domains. This policy provided access to European firearms and technology, created potential diplomatic channels with Western powers, and introduced a new religious force to challenge Buddhist dominance. The warlord also patronized native Japanese religious movements that opposed the established Buddhist hierarchy. He supported the Jodo Shinshu sect, a branch of Pure Land Buddhism that had broken away from the more militant Iko-iki. By fostering religious diversity and competition, Nobunaga sought to weaken the overall influence of any single religious authority that could challenge his rule. By 1580, Nobunaga had effectively broken the political and military power of the major Buddhist sects in central Japan. The fall of Ishiyama Hongan-ji marked the end of organized religious resistance to his authority. The remaining Buddhist institutions were forced to accept a subordinate role, with their activities closely monitored and regulated by Nobunaga's administration. With religious opposition quelled, Nobunaga faced a formidable secular threat that would test his military genius. The Takeda clan of Kai Province, masters of cavalry warfare, stood as the final barrier between Nobunaga and his dream of a unified Japan. Led by Takeda Shingen, known as the Tiger of Kai, the Takeda had built a fearsome reputation through decades of successful campaigns and innovative military strategies. The clash between Nobunaga and the Takeda was inevitable as both sought to expand their territories. In 1572, Nobunaga's ally, Tokugawa Ieyasu, faced Takeda Shingen's advancing army at the Battle of Mikatagahara. Shingen's cavalry, renowned for their fortress-breaking formation, overwhelmed Ieyasu's forces, demonstrating the effectiveness of Takeda's tactics and threatening Nobunaga's expansion plans. Nobunaga's strategic acumen shone through in the aftermath. He quickly mobilized his forces and implemented a defensive strategy to prevent further Takeda advances, effectively blunting the impact of Shingen's victory. The unexpected death of Takeda Shingen in May 1573 brought a temporary respite, but his son, Takeda Katsuyori, inherited the clan's military prowess and continued to pose a significant threat to Oda territories. Recognizing the Takeda as his most dangerous opponents, Nobunaga spent years meticulously preparing for a decisive confrontation. He gathered allies, strengthened his forces, and developed tactics specifically designed to counter the Takeda's cavalry-based strategies. Nobunaga also engaged in diplomatic efforts to isolate the Takeda and deprive them of potential allies. The culmination of this rivalry came in 1575 at the Battle of Nagashino. Takeda Katsuyori led a force of 15,000 troops, including the elite Takeda cavalry, against the combined armies of Oda Nobunaga and Tokugawa Ieyasu. Nobunaga had carefully chosen the battlefield and prepared extensive defenses, positioning 3,000 arquebusiers behind wooden palisades and streams to create a killing field that would negate the Takeda cavalry's traditional advantages. As the battle began, Katsuyori ordered wave after wave of cavalry charges, confident in his samurai horsemen's ability to break through the Oda lines. However, Nobunaga's preparations proved decisive. His arquebusiers, organized into 3 ranks, employed a revolutionary volley fire technique that created a relentless storm of lead. The once invincible Takeda cavalry found themselves decimated by this new form of warfare, unable to close with their enemies or utilize their traditional tactics effectively. The Battle of Nagashino raged for hours, with Katsuyori repeatedly throwing his forces against Nobunaga's gun line in increasingly desperate attempts to break through. By the end of the day, the Takeda army lay in ruins, with thousands of their best warriors and horses littering the battlefield. Katsuyori himself barely escaped with his life, fleeing the field with a small remnant of his once mighty force. Nobunaga's victory at Nagashino was total and decisive. It not only broke the military power of the Takeda clan, but also signaled a profound shift in Japanese warfare. The supremacy of cavalry, which had dominated battlefields for centuries, gave way to firearms and infantry tactics. This transformation in military doctrine would have far-reaching consequences for the future of warfare in Japan, cementing Nobunaga's reputation as a military innovator and bringing him one step closer to his goal of unification. In the world of daimyo politics, today's ally could become tomorrow's enemy. Nobunaga's path to power remained treacherous even after his decisive victory at Nagashino. The fragmented nature of feudal Japan necessitated a delicate balance of diplomacy and force, with alliances serving as both shields and potential daggers in the back. Nobunaga's most pivotal alliance was forged in 1562 with Tokugawa Ieyasu, a neighboring daimyo who would play a crucial role in Japan's unification. This partnership, born of mutual interest and respect, proved to be one of Nobunaga's most enduring and strategically important relationships. Ieyasu's domain served as a buffer against eastern threats, allowing Nobunaga to focus his attention westward. In return, Nobunaga provided military support to Ieyasu, helping him consolidate power in his own region. However, not all of Nobunaga's alliances proved as stable. His relationship with Ashikaga Yoshiaki, whom he had helped install as shogun in 1568, quickly soured as Nobunaga's power grew. Yoshiaki, realizing he was little more than a figurehead under Nobunaga's control, began to conspire against his former ally. By 1573, the tension between the two had reached a breaking point, leading Nobunaga to depose Yoshiaki and effectively end the Ashikaga shogunate. Perhaps the most bitter betrayal Nobunaga faced came from within his own family. In 1570, Azai Nagamasa, Nobunaga's brother-in-law and erstwhile ally, turned against him. This betrayal was particularly stinging, as Nobunaga had arranged the marriage between Nagamasa and his own sister, Oichi, to cement their alliance. The subsequent conflict lasted 3 years and saw some of the most intense fighting of Nobunaga's career. Nobunaga's treatment of defeated enemies varied greatly, often based on cold political calculations rather than emotion or honor. In some cases, he showed surprising magnanimity, incorporating former foes into his growing coalition. This strategy proved effective in turning potential threats into valuable assets. In other instances, Nobunaga's response to betrayal or resistance was ruthless and absolute. The destruction of the Enryaku-ji temple complex in 1571 serves as a stark example of his willingness to eliminate any power that challenged his authority, regardless of its cultural or religious significance. His ability to turn former enemies into allies was crucial to his success in unifying central Japan. He often employed a combination of military pressure and political incentives to bring rival daimyo into his fold. By 1582, he had either subdued or allied with most of the major daimyo in central and western Japan. This network of alliances, built through a combination of military might, political acumen, and strategic marriages, formed the foundation of Nobunaga's control over much of the country. The Oda clan's sphere of influence expanded to include powerful families like the Tokugawa, Takeda, and Uesugi. Each alliance brought its own set of challenges and opportunities. Nobunaga had to balance the ambitions of his allies with his own goals, ensuring that no single partner became too powerful or too discontented. This delicate balancing act required constant attention and adjustment, with Nobunaga always ready to shift his support or apply pressure as needed. Nobunaga's approach to alliance building was not limited to other daimyo. He also cultivated relationships with foreign powers. particularly European traders and missionaries. These connections provided him with access to advanced weaponry and technology, further cementing his military superiority. In the early hours of June 21, 1582, a fateful event unfolded that would forever alter the course of Japanese history. Oda Nobunaga, the man who had come closer than any other to unifying Japan, found himself in a perilous situation at Honno-Ji Temple in Kyoto. With his armies deployed elsewhere, Nobunaga had only a small retinue for protection, unaware of the impending assault. As dawn broke, AkechiMitsuhide's forces surrounded the temple, catching Nobunaga completely off guard. The element of surprise was total, leaving the warlord with little time to mount an effective defense. Despite the overwhelming odds, Nobunaga fought bravely, demonstrating the martial prowess that had propelled him to the pinnacle of power in Japan. The clash of steel and the roar of flames engulfed Honno-Ji as Nobunaga and his loyal followers fought desperately against the tide of attackers. However, it quickly became apparent that the situation was hopeless. Outnumbered and outmaneuvered, Nobunaga realized that his meteoric rise was about to come to a violent end. Like a burning comet that lights the sky one final time, Nobunaga made the decision to take his own life through the ritual of seppuku, a form of ritual suicide considered honorable for samurai facing defeat. The news of Nobunaga's death sent shockwaves through Japan, throwing the country into a state of chaos. For years, Nobunaga had been the dominant force in Japanese politics and warfare. His sudden demise created a power vacuum that threatened to undo all the progress made towards unification. In the immediate aftermath, AkechiMitsuhide sought to consolidate his position and claim the mantle of leadership. However, his triumph would prove to be short-lived. Toyotomi Hideyoshi, another of Nobunaga's generals, moved swiftly to avenge his fallen lord. In a remarkable display of military acumen, Hideyoshi managed to gather his forces and confront Mitsuhide in just 11 days. The ensuing battle, known as the Battle of Yamazaki, saw Hideyoshi emerge victorious. Mitsuhide was killed while fleeing the battlefield, bringing an end to his brief aspirations of power. This rapid turn of events demonstrated the volatile nature of Japanese politics during the Sengoku period and highlighted the strength of the loyalties Nobunaga had inspired among his subordinates. While the incident at Honno-Ji marked the end of Nobunaga's life, it did not spell the end of his legacy in Japanese history. The innovations and reforms he had introduced continued to shape the country long after his death. His emphasis on meritocracy over hereditary privilege, his economic reforms, and his military innovations had set Japan on a path towards modernization and unification. Toyotomi Hideyoshi, building upon the foundation laid by Nobunaga, went on to complete the unification of Japan. Later, Tokugawa Ieyasu, another former ally of Nobunaga, established the Tokugawa shogunate, ushering in a period of peace and stability that would last for over 2 centuries. The incident at Honno-Ji serves as a stark reminder of the precarious nature of power in Sengoku-era Japan. Despite his military genius and political acumen, Nobunaga fell victim to the very system of shifting alliances that he had so skillfully navigated throughout his career. His death marked the end of an era, but also the beginning of a new chapter in Japanese history. During his lifetime, Nobunaga earned the fearsome moniker of Demon King due to his ruthless tactics and willingness to disregard long-standing traditions. This reputation, however, was just the beginning of a complex narrative that would evolve over centuries. In the year 1582, the dream of a unified Japan hung precariously in the balance. Oda Nobunaga's sudden demise at Honno-Ji left a power vacuum that threatened to plunge the nation back into chaos. At the time of his death, Nobunaga had brought approximately 1/3 of Japan's provinces under his control, a significant achievement but far from complete unification. The fragile alliances and tenuous peace he had forged now faced their greatest test, as ambitious daimyo and even some of Nobunaga's own generals sought to seize power for themselves. From this tumultuous period, one figure rose to prominence: Toyotomi Hideyoshi. A man of humble origins, Hideyoshi had become one of Nobunaga's most trusted commanders. He acted swiftly and decisively, rallying Nobunaga's remaining forces and moving against AkechiMitsuhide, the traitor responsible for Nobunaga's death. Hideyoshi's victory at the Battle of Yamazaki, a mere 11 days after Nobunaga's fall, established him as the dominant figure in the struggle for succession. Hideyoshi's ascension marked a continuation of many of Nobunaga's policies and ambitions. He pursued the campaign against the remaining independent daimyo with vigor, employing both military might and diplomatic finesse. Hideyoshi's approach, while often ruthless, also incorporated elements of compromise and negotiation that allowed him to bring more territories under central control without always resorting to open warfare. By 1590, Hideyoshi had succeeded in bringing all of Japan under his control, achieving the unification that had eluded Nobunaga. Hideyoshi's reign saw the expansion of Nobunaga's innovative policies. He maintained the emphasis on meritocracy, allowing talented individuals to rise to positions of power regardless of their social background. Hideyoshi further developed economic reforms such as the standardization of currency and weights, implementing them on a national scale. He also continued Nobunaga's policy of openness to foreign trade and cultural exchange, albeit with increasing caution as the influence of European powers grew. While Hideyoshi consolidated his power, another key player was quietly positioning himself for the future. Tokugawa Ieyasu, a former ally of Nobunaga and now a powerful daimyo, carefully navigated the shifting political landscape. Ieyasu's strategic acumen and patience would eventually pay off following Hideyoshi's death in 1598. The years after Hideyoshi's passing saw renewed instability as various factions vied for control. The Council of Five Elders, established by Hideyoshi to govern during his young son's minority, quickly fractured. Ieyasu, seizing the opportunity, emerged victorious from the Battle of Sekigahara in 1600, effectively becoming the most powerful man in Japan. In 1603, Ieyasu established the Tokugawa shogunate, a system of government that would endure for over 2.5 centuries. This new regime built upon many of the foundations laid by Nobunaga and expanded by Hideyoshi. The centralized authority, standardized legal codes, and emphasis on stability that characterized the Tokugawa period all had their roots in the reforms initiated during Nobunaga's time. The Tokugawa shogunate brought about an era of peace and stability known as the Pax Tokugawa. This period saw significant economic growth, cultural development, and social change. The urban centers that had begun to flourish under Nobunaga's policies continued to expand and evolve. The arts, including literature, theater, and visual arts, experienced a golden age, building upon the cultural renaissance that had begun during the Azuchi Momoyama period. Behind the legend of Oda Nobunaga, the Demon King, lay a complex individual whose personal life profoundly influenced his public actions. While historical accounts often focus on Nobunaga's military and political achievements, the personal side of this influential warlord reveals a multifaceted character that defies simple categorization. Nobunaga's marriage to Nohime, daughter of Saito Dosan, exemplified the intricate interplay between personal relationships and political alliances in feudal Japan. This union, arranged to solidify ties between the Oda and Saito clans, evolved into a partnership of mutual respect and support. Nohime's intelligence and beauty made her a trusted confidant, influencing Nobunaga's decisions in diplomacy and clan politics. Nobunaga's relationship with his children, particularly his heir Nobutada, reflected his meritocratic approach to leadership. He subjected Nobutada to rigorous training, preparing him as a leader capable of continuing the Oda clan's ambitious agenda. This forward-thinking mindset aimed to establish a lasting dynasty built on competence rather than mere birthright. The warlord's famous temper and occasional erratic behavior likely stemmed from personal traumas and the immense pressures of his position. The constant threat of betrayal and the brutal realities of the Sengoku period took their toll. These traits, often attributed to his ruthless nature, reveal a man grappling with the enormous responsibility of unifying a fractured nation. Contrasting with his fierce reputation was Nobunaga's patronage of the arts, particularly the tea ceremony. He actively shaped its development, encouraging innovations that reflected his vision of a new Japan. His appreciation for the subtle aesthetics and philosophical underpinnings of the tea ceremony revealed a depth of character often overshadowed by his military exploits. Nobunaga's personal interests extended beyond warfare and politics, encompassing falconry and poetry. These pursuits informed his understanding of strategy and enhanced his diplomatic skills. His love for falconry, for instance, informed his understanding of strategy and timing, concepts he applied in military campaigns. The warlord's fascination with European culture stemmed from genuine curiosity about the world beyond Japan. Nobunaga's willingness to don Portuguese attire and incorporate European dishes into his court's cuisine demonstrated an openness to foreign influences. This personal interest in cross-cultural exchange had far-reaching implications for Japan's engagement with the outside world during his reign. Nobunaga's approach to religion revealed a pragmatic understanding of spirituality's role in society. While known for suppressing militant Buddhist sects, he also supported certain Buddhist traditions and participated in Shinto rituals. This nuanced approach used religion as a tool for social cohesion while preventing it from threatening his authority. The personal library of Oda Nobunaga offered another window into his mind. His collection, which included works on military strategy, philosophy, and natural sciences from both Eastern and Western traditions, spoke to an intellectual curiosity that fueled his innovative approach to governance and warfare. Oda Nobunaga's tumultuous life and enduring legacy profoundly reshaped Japan, setting the stage for centuries of unity and prosperity. His blend of ambition and innovation laid the groundwork for the Tokugawa shogunate's era of peace. Nobunaga's influence on warfare, art, and commerce left an indelible mark on Japanese society. As we reflect on his impact, questions arise about Japan's alternate paths. How might the nation's trajectory have differed had Nobunaga lived to see unification? These unresolved aspects of his legacy continue to captivate, underscoring the enduring fascination with this transformative figure in Japanese history.